Yo, what's up, YouTube? All right, so this is a recording. We're gonna do this real quick and easy. So we got the UFC 319 Dricus du Plessis versus Hamza Chimaev coming up this weekend. So we're gonna do a little fight prediction. We got the unstoppable thing versus the immovable thing. You know how it go in physics. So we're gonna figure out who wins. So in the meantime, we're gonna go through the main card, all that stuff. But look at this scary guy. Look at the way he's just looking. This is gonna be crazy. So, got 6'1", 6'2". Before we get into that, we're gonna get into the rest of the card. Pretty decent card. Cannot cap to you. Got early prelims, one fight. They actually moved these two shorties to the prelims, and then they're just gonna go from there. So, not too bad. So yeah, I'll check back in a second with y'all. Appreciate everybody. Yup.
Damn, son, where'd you find this?
So we back. We here with the early prelims. So we got two guys. We got Idiris versus Joseph Morales. I think this is Alibi's debut. He is from Kazakhstan, so there is a possibility he could take this fight. I'm pretty sure, if I'm not mistaken, I don't think he's that young. Let me see if I can click on him. Does it say his age? I don't know this guy's age. He's 30. So he's just about getting into his prime. I know he's got 5 wins by knockout. He's got a couple by submission. I don't know who he's beaten to get to the UFC, to be honest, but I heard he's like a pretty good prospect. I know Joseph Morales, he did have a loss to that was a Shelton. Pretty sure that was Eric Shelton. Now Eric Shelton's actually not bad, but I'm pretty sure that fight took place in 2018. So I guess Joseph Morales is now back in the UFC or something in that. The fact that they don't even have Levy's reach, and I don't know. But I'm gonna just go for the Kazakhstan guy. He's 30, and I haven't seen Joseph Morales in the UFC yet since 2018. So let's see. So we got all right. So this is one of those women's fights, because here's the thing about muscle women MMA fights. Many times they really don't like to throw down, but you get a fight like this, they might actually want to throw down. We got two Brazilians. All right, we got Silva versus Barbosa. Pretty decent records. I know Silva's coming off a loss recently. I'm pretty sure she lost. Let me check that. Let me check that loss real quick. I'm actually not sure who she lost to last. She lost to Araujo. That was that fight? Goodness gracious. Yeah, if you're losing to Araujo, I don't know what to tell you. But she's had some pretty solid wins before that. I haven't seen her fight since November of last year, so she either got injured or she just needed some time to work on her game. But I think after a loss out of Araujo, taking some time off, she's probably going to come in looking for some real smoke. She does like to throw. She does like to throw. She'll shoot some takedowns as well. I don't know if she's going to get any on Dion, though, because Miss Barbosa is pretty good. 50% striking accuracy is not bad. She did lose to, Miranda Maverick. She did lose to her. But she's beaten a couple other women, so it's one of those fights where like each of these women got 3 or 4 fights in the UFC. I think it'll actually be a pretty good one. I don't really have a horse in the race, but I would say they're pretty decent fighters overall. Pretty solid grapplers. You can see the submission average. Like now, Silva doesn't have any takedown defense on the record, but I don't think she's I don't know if anyone's even attempted to shoot on her. I don't know if Araujo was able to get her down. It might have just been a smudge fest, or she did get her down, and it was a smudge fest. Either way, if you're losing out of Araujo, I don't know. So if someone would have picked Dion Barboza, I wouldn't be surprised. She does look a little in shape, but yeah, we'll see. Either way, should be a toss-up fight. Should be a decent fight, better than some of the other women who kind of don't want to fight at all. But if Silva's losing out of Araujo, I don't know if he wanted to fight. So we got Edson Barbosa versus Jakar Klose as the next fight. So Edson, legendary, UFC fighter known for his kicks, spinning wheel kicks, one of the, really good kickboxing guys, in MMA. He's definitely been around for a minute, 24-12 record, which is honestly still pretty good because that's still, a 2-0 ratio. I think his last fight was, who did he lose to? Was that not Sadiq Yusuf? Although he beat Sadiq Yusuf, he lost to Lerone Murphy, The Lerone Murphy loss wasn't bad. 5 round, kind of got whooped on. Same thing with the Yusuf fight. So one of those things where he's kind of getting outclassed by some of these younger guys. But I don't think Klose is. I just don't know if he's that good, bro. If I'm being honest, I TKO. I understand that. Now, Klose is also coming off a loss, and he's got some decent pop. He's not a bad striker, but I just don't know, man. I'm pretty sure he lost to Joel Alvarez. Yep, lost to Joel Alvarez last December. I don't know why these guys are fighting like a year later, but who knows? Yeah, he beat Rafa Garcia, old man Garcia. Like, he's got some decent wins. I don't think he yeah, he lost to Neal Dariush, I'm pretty sure. Yeah, he got whooped on by Dariush. So, and he did beat Joaquim Silva, who is not a bad fighter either, because he's got some pretty decent power. So, I don't think Klose is bad by any means. I just don't know if he has the skill at the moment to be able to keep up with Edson. It all kind of depends, though. If you look at the significant strikes landed per minute, like, Klose isn't bad. So, personally, he might just knock out Edson. Like, he might just knock out Edson because he does absorb a lot of strikes. But it kind of depends. So, yeah, at this point, it could be one of those things where, Klose does end up winning this fight. Now, I don't remember how old he is. But, yeah. How old is this guy? They're probably not going to say it. Oh, well. Yeah, I don't know his age. But, hey, it's all good, though. So who's next? We got Chase Hooper versus Alexander Hernandez. So Chase Hooper, they're both coming off wins. Chase Hooper is a very, very good grappler, and I would say his stand-up needs some work, but he's a really good grappler. I've seen him, on the scene regionally, stuff like that as well. So he be doing his thing. Alexander Hernandez, he be doing his thing too. Now he's coming off a win against that was Holobar. Was that Kurt? Yeah. Wasn't too bad. Decent decision. He did also beat Hubbard. So he's not bad. I don't think he's a really accurate striker, but he's got some decent power. I don't know what his grappling's really like though. I see his takedown accuracy is about the same. Now Chase Hooper is not really much of a takedown, wrestler. Like, he doesn't wrestle, he'll kind of like pick you, or if the fight goes to the ground, he'll kind of find his submissions there. Yeah, like a 50% submission rate is pretty good. So if it goes to the ground, I'd say Chase Hooper. If it stays standing up, I might lean towards Alexander Hernandez, who has 7 knockouts. So we'll see how that goes. Jessica Andrade, Lupi Godinez. Andrade's last fight was a loss, but she's always game. She's always ready to bang. She's 5'1", but she's been in the UFC for a minute. She's always ready to bang and fight. 10 knockouts, 10 submissions. She's actually a pretty decent fighter. She just needs to kind of mix it up a little more. She does say, she is on a 2-loss streak though, which is pretty bad. She got submitted early this year back in May. Yeah, that was pretty bad. I remember that. Lupe Godinez, I just don't know. Like, she's Mexican. Sometimes they come to fight, sometimes they don't. She's got, some losses. Yeah, she did lose to McKinney Durham. She did lose to the eye lady. I'm sorry, John Deere Roba. I just always called her the eye lady just because of how she looked. But yeah, so in this particular matchup, like, I might slide with Jessica Andrade because she's the OG. You feel me? I'm gonna slide with her. And I know she's game. I don't know if Lupi Godinez is game. So Meerschaert versus Oleksiejczuk. Meerschaert, unless he's gonna take you to the ground and submit you, because I do think he's like an A-tier grappler at least. Like, people kind of sleep on him, but he's actually pretty decent. Like, he's a solid grappler. His stand-up's just mid, bro. His stand-up's mid. I mean, he's like, is he Paul Craig type level? Like, 29 wins in his career by submission is crazy. I think he might have like the submission record. He lost to Prates. He lost to DeRitter as well. He did beat Edmund Shabazi, and that's a decent win. I think Oleksiejczuk, but he's just a knockout artist though, and he's coming from Poland. So he beat Rodriguez Dumas. He did lose to Malcolm. He did lose to what's his name, Bullet, and he did lose to Kevin Holland. So it's one of those things where he'll go out there kind of looking to punch, but I just don't know if he'll get to it. They're both around the same height. I will say, in terms of the grappling, I think Joe Meerschaert's going to have the advantage. Let's see what the odds say. No odds on this. Yeah, so if it goes to the ground, I would definitely go for Joe Meerschaert. If it stays on the feet, though, once again, like Hal's definitely the better striker, but I don't know how accurate he is. So I think Joe could probably mix it up and maybe get it to the ground. All right, last fight of the prelims, we got Basanger Susurkaev just one of the Skura Bukura Rufna, one of them guys, from that part of the land, that part of the country, that part of the I'm just kidding. But yeah, Russian guy versus Eric Nolan. Probably gonna go with the Russian guy if I'm being honest. I don't think Eric Nolan's even. I don't know if he's ever fought. Has he ever fought in the UFC? I do not think I know this man. I do not know this man. This has got to be his debut. Okay. Just going to go with the Russian guy, bro. I'm going to go with the Russian guy. 8 wins by knockout for the Russian. Is this both of their debuts? These are just guys. These are guys. Yeah, the KO, TKO, they both definitely like to strike a little bit. Eric Nolan seems to be a little more of a decision merchant. Takedown defense, 100% for Bazangar. So yeah, I'm gonna go with the Russian guy, bro. Sorry, American. I'm gonna go with the Russian guy. Now, Tim Elliott versus Kaya Sakura. Tim Elliott's been a fighter for a minute. He fought Demetrius Johnson for the belt back in the G. He's been around. He's got a 21-13 record. He's on like the bad side of that. Like he's not like Edson Barbosa where it's like, okay, you still got like at least a 2.0, a 2-0, or 2-to-1, ratio like Call of Duty. If you got a 2-to-1 ratio KDA, you ain't bad, or KD, I should say, because we don't count assists over here. Kaya Sakura's last fight was, I'm pretty sure, Pantoja, and he did lose that. I just think, Pantoja's too good. He's coming from Ryzen, so I think there's a jump in competition. But if he gets you, man, he gonna knock you out. I think he's a pretty diverse striker as well. I think fighting against Tim Elliott, he'll be able to pace himself a little bit, and not have to be scrambling and wrestling. But Tim Elliott's not necessarily a bad grappler either. It's a pretty solid takedown defense of both of them. And yeah, Tim Elliott's gonna definitely be shooting, mixing it up on him, trying to get him to the ground. I don't think Kaya Sakura is bad on the ground either, though. So we'll see what happens there. I'm gonna go with Kaya Sakura just because he's a little younger, and if he really wants to be in the UFC, bro, you can't beat Tim Elliott. I don't know what to tell you. I don't know what Tim Elliott's last fight was. He only has 3 wins by knockout. He did beat someone. He lost to Muhammad Mokaev a couple years ago. Yeah, Tim Elliott hasn't fought in like 2 years, bro. I forgot about it. He hasn't fought in like 2 years. So he lost to Muhammad Mokaev, who was actually a pretty good fighter, but bro hasn't fought in 2 years. Come on, you gotta just make it work. Now, this is a banger of a fight. Jared Cannonier versus Michael Venom Page. This is a battle of the old heads, man. My man Jared Cannonier is like 41 years old. He's got some solid wins. He's fought for the belt. He's basically fought most of the who's who's of this division, from Whitaker to Kai Barajo. He fought Imavov. He fought Robert Whitaker. All of these guys he's fighting in their prime. So Jared Cannonier is one of those guys where it's like, he's the right type of gatekeeper. You know what I'm saying? Like, he gonna go out there and always try, but it's not like he'll just get, like, you gotta put him down to beat him. He's not gonna quit, but you gotta put him down to just be way more skilled than him. So I remember his last fight, he did KO Rodriguez, RoboCop earlier this year. That was a crazy fight too, because they were going tooth and nail. And at some point, Canada was like, nah, I'm just not playing with this, man. And Canada does one of those things where, like, he'll start losing in the first round and then eventually, start picking it back up again. So it's one of those type of fights. He did lose to Kai Barajo via decision. He barely survived that fight. He did get put up by Nasruddin Imavov. That was just kind of one of those schoolings, unfortunately. He had a win over Sean Strickland, who I think he won that split decision. Just because that was like the first time we kind of saw Sean Strickland really in the back foot. And so because of that, he's popping a jab on the back foot, but it's based on aggression and, who's landing a little bit more pop on their shots. Even if Sean's landing a little bit more, going the back foot kind of just, it's not like at any point Kennedy was like, oh my gosh. And not to say he hurt Sean either, but he's at least trying to swing for him. And he's still popping a jab himself moving forward. But, Sean Strickland's got that length on him. He did brutally he actually set, I think, the middleweight strike record against Marvin Vettori. He was losing that first round. I was like, yo, you can't be losing to Vettori. Then the next few rounds, you just obliterated Vettori. You can't put out Vettori. He's got one of the best chins in UFC history. So, yeah. That was a couple years ago. Wow. That felt like yesterday, man. I'm not going to lie. Crazy. Time really flies. And then, yeah, I guess his 2 losses, yeah. I think that's why. Those 2 losses, I just, but those are 2 younger guys. Both guys he fought were like in their, young 30s. And he was like 39 at the time. Probably going on 40. So, yeah, I think Canada's got a good chance to that's the thing. So, MVP, let me get to MVP real quick. So, he fought Kevin Holland, schooled him, throwing out elbows, dang near dropped him. I think he did, I don't know if he actually dropped him, but he at least stunned him and threw him down, taunted, emoted on him. You know how it goes with MVP. He turned Ian Gary into Prime Khabib. He turned him into, one of the Gracies, because Gary, who I think is actually a good striker, probably a high level striker. I'd say he's fast, he's quick. I mean, given what he did to Carlos Prates on short notice, yeah. So MVP pretty much obliterated Gary on the feet, and then Gary started shooting takedowns, smudging him on the feet. I still don't know if Gary won that fight, but I guess he did. It was a unanimous decision, but I think if MVP on the feet threw more strikes, but yeah. Then we got Magomedov. He fought Shara Bullet and schooled Shara Bullet, so I think MVP is going to be very fast for middleweight. And they both pretty much got a decent frame. I know MVP is very long. He's 6'3". He's about that Izzy type of height, and Cannonier is a little shorter. Sub 6 feet, so he's shorter than me. But he's got some pretty decent arms. Like in terms of for his size, he's got some decent kind of arm length for someone who's only 5'11". So I think MVP might win this fight overall, but he doesn't really throw much. So that's one thing about him. Like in middleweight, he did say in this interview, so probably have to throw more strikes to win the fight. So I wouldn't be surprised if he starts mixing in some combinations against Cannonier, starts going to the body, some spinning things, more flying attacks just to kind of get him on his guard. But if Cannonier mixes up enough, with some clinch work, things like that, I think he could definitely turn this fight into a banger. So just that. Apologies. All right, so we're getting back into it. So I guess if I were to pick a fight, I'd probably go with MVP, just due to he's probably a little fresher in the sport. But one thing is, I feel like if Cannonier lands a couple punches on MVP, he might go down. So if he's able to kind of stay at range, it's one of those fights where I think either Cannonier gets schooled by MVP, or it's one of those surprising Cannonier. He's getting battered and bruised in the first round, and then turns it up for the next two. So it's going to be one of those type of fights. Either way, I'm happy if either guy wins. I think at this point in Cannonier's career, might be looking to retire soon, because I just don't think there's a title shot, coming up soon with Imavov and all these other guys there. You're probably just going to lose him again as he's still getting older. He's getting better as a fighter. It's just, overall damage and constantly cutting weight and being 41, so we'll see what happens there. Now, Carlos Prates, Jeff Neal. This would be another entertaining fight. I'll probably slide with Carlos Prates here. Wait a minute. Jeff Neal's last fight was a win? Who did he fight? Who did he beat? Oh, he did beat RDA. He did beat RDA. That's right. So yeah, he lost to Shavkat. That was a pretty good fight though. Last minute submission. Got bulldog choked. Split decision versus Ian Gary. I think if Neal was a more diverse striker, he probably wins that fight against Ian Gary, because one of the judges did give it to Jeff Neal. So I wouldn't be surprised if that's a win for him. I think he did beat RDA. I think that might have been a retirement or something. I think he did KO RDA. So that was crazy. Jeff Neal does hit hard. Carlos Prates' last loss also was to Ian Gary, but before that, 16 knockouts. Before that, he was looking pretty good. Whooped on Neil Magny. He did whoop on Li Juliang. Was that Trevin Giles he whooped on as well? So Trevin Giles is a little bit chinny. So it's just one of those things. So I'll probably slide with the younger guy here. Who do I want to win? I kind of want to go. I kind of want Jeff Neal to win a little bit, just because he won the older heads. But I think Prates is one of those guys who kind of take Jeff Neal's spot. This is one of those kind of passing the torch things. And I think Prates is a little more dynamic of a striker than Jeff Neal. But I think Jeff Neal's hands are actually a little faster. I think he actually has some surprisingly fast hands. The problem is just sometimes he doesn't throw enough kicks or combinations. If he mixes it up a little bit more, you see guys like Dustin back in the day who used to throw out a lot more body kicks and head kicks and chop your leg a little bit. Even Gaethje used to do stuff like that. So I think if Jeff Neal can kind of chop at Prates' legs and kind of slow him down a bit, we'll see. Because I know Prates is going to be the more dynamic striker, I'm sure. But they both throw a pretty good amount. But like I said, Jeff Neal throws a lot per minute though. So, and they're both very accurate. So we'll see what happens. Wouldn't be surprised if one of these guys shoot. Jeff Neal might try and mix it up, shoot, see what Carlos does on the ground. So, co-main event, we got Leon Murphy versus Aaron Pico. So this is Aaron Pico's first fight in the UFC. He came from Bellator, I think. I don't think he's that good personally, in terms of UFC wise. But I mean, if he wins this fight, hey, Lerone Murphy is an undefeated English fighter. He's very similar to Leon Edwards, where he is somewhat of a decision merchant. But I would say he tries to go for the kill when he has it. But there's other times like when he fought Josh Emmett and got that win. You can't really fight Josh Emmett expecting to just live, unless you're like that guy. But I do think he could have made it a little more interesting just by throwing some more ferocity on some of his moves. But he was throwing some kicks, mixing in the elbows. He was doing what he needed to do to win the fight. Same thing with against Cannonier. He did beat Barbosa, so he's got some decent wins. No great wins. I think he's an accurate striker, good striker, and I think in this fight he should school Aaron Pico. This is one of those things where if Lerone Murphy was fighting anyone else, we probably would not want him to win. Now, I think this fight was supposed to be Movsar Evloev versus Aaron Pico. Movsar Evloev got an injury. I just don't think he wanted to fight Aaron Pico because why would you have a guy who's like undefeated but like, beating guys like Diego Lopez and Aljamain Sterling. That Aljo fight was one of those close fights, I would say Movsar probably won based off of pitter-pat damage, but he did get out grappled. But yeah, so Lerone Murphy, who's undefeated, who most people count as boring, if you saw the press conferences, the crowd was pretty much cheering for him because, he's essentially the representative of the UFC in this case. And he's not a bad guy, he's a good guy. He's not really entertaining on the mic or anything, but, he's tough. He's cool. Like, he's decent, you feel me? So we're going to see what happens with this fight. Yeah, we're going to see what happens. I do think if Aaron Pico, because he's trying to ask for a title shot. I don't think he deserves a title shot, but, someone out there is going to believe he deserves a title shot if he ends up winning against Lerone Murphy. I just think Lerone Murphy is very diverse, as a striker. I do think, he'll just be mixing in some knees. I think he's going to try and get a finish or at least make a statement against Aaron Pico. I think a finish here would be good for him. That way he can, kind of break that decision streak, but we'll see what happens. So, I think I covered all these fights pretty well so far. So we got the main event, Dricus du Plessis versus Khamzat Chimaev. Country, really? He's representing the United Arab Emirates. That is crazy. So he's a Chechen fighter. He comes from a place whose land is taken over by who knows. That's basically what it is. But yeah, so as we know, we got Khamzat, who was he was a phenom. Like when he was coming into the UFC, there was a time where he fought, I think during COVID, like 5 times that year. He was just, going off one week, he'd fight again the next week. He was crazy. He was doing what he needed to do to win fights. So in terms of, I guess we'll talk about Khamzat first a little bit, and then we'll go to DDP and then talk about who I think will win. So he's got, some knockouts and submissions, 9 first-round finishes. I think Khamzat is, I would actually say he might be the best grappler we've ever seen in UFC history. I think he's a little underrated. I guess it's either him or could be one of those type of guys. There's other guys who are kind of up there as well. DC as a wrestler. But in terms of submission artists, wrestling, putting it all together, just taking you out on the ground and imposing their will, having their way with you, I would say Chimaev's just the best guy to ever do it. He's got a bunch of great wins. Meerschaert, he TKO'd down. He didn't even have to shoot against Meerschaert. He just threw a punch and killed him. He submitted Li Jingliang, picked him up, threw him down, talked to Dana, which was a crazy moment. The fight against Gilbert Burns was a unanimous decision. They fought tooth and nail. I don't think Burns won that fight, but Burns looked really good, and some people say he fraud-checked Chimaev. But at that time, Burns was a top-level fighter. He just fought Kamaru Usman probably, 2 fights before that, I'm sure? Let me actually check just to see, because I don't know. Literally, he fought Usman 2 fights before that, and he beat Wonderboy Thompson. And Wonderboy Thompson, people thought might have schooled, Gilbert Burns. Now, he did kind of wrestle him and things like that, but still. After that, he submitted Kevin Holland. I know he got Kevin Holland out of there quickly, but if you kind of watch the fight slowly, there's a lot of sneaky tricks that Kevin Holland's doing on the ground to where if you weren't this phenom like Khamzat Chimaev with elite level grappling, wrestling, and just pure, strength and ability, I think Holland probably gets out of some of those. Like, it's kind of similar to his loss to Roman Elite, where like you got a guy who's really skilled on the ground and super strong. So it's like, sure, Kevin Holland can outskill most people on the ground, but if you got a guy who's just as skilled as him, if not more, and stronger, yeah. So submitted Kevin Holland, a majority decision against Usman, where I don't know if he won that fight, but I'd say sure, you could probably give it to Hamzat if you score that first round at 10-8 or something. They say he broke his hand in the fight, but he broke his hand when Usman was trying to get out the submission, and he kind of slammed Hamzat's entire like upper arm onto the mat, or not the mat, but the octagon floor. So I think the Usman fight, if it went 2 more rounds, Usman wins that, but I digress. Doesn't matter. He went back in smooth fashion and submitted. He actually took a year off and then fought Whitaker. Once again, now in this fight against Whitaker, I think he took a more patient approach. I don't think he was as aggressive as he always is, which is a good thing. I think if you kind of watch the fight, it took him a little bit of time to submit him. And it was kind of like what he did with Kevin Holland was different, because Kevin Holland's rolling and things like that. And it's similar, Rob's fighting it off for a minute, but you kind of just see Hamzat slowly but surely chopping away at this. Okay, Rob gets his hand. He actually does a great flip, and then what Hamzat basically does is, okay, cool, I'm going to stick my leg behind your leg. So even if you flip, I'm going to be able to just rotate with you, chop your leg so you can't escape out, and then I'll re-grab you in the meantime. So he's relentless. Even against Usman, it was one of those takedowns where he shot twice on Usman. Usman ended up stuffing both, and then as Usman's getting his last leg up, he goes for that final just grab to get Usman down that final time. And it's certain things for some of these guys, and I think Usman's knees also just being, just gone. Those type of things happen. But it's similar to when I watched Islam Makhachev versus Dustin Poirier. You watch that 5th round and how he wins that fight in particular. Dustin gets up, but that extra just shot. Like, some of these guys are at that level where they're just non-stop, and they're not just flailing around at you. They are non-stop, and they're going to get the takedown. Because some guys like Paul Craig, they'll kind of be on the ground and, some people just, please. It's like, nah, they're going after him. So Hamzat, I think he's a skilled fighter. I don't think he's overrated. I think, he deserves to be the favorite here. Dricus du Plessis. Now, Dricus du Plessis has a chance after this fight to becoming the middleweight GOAT. I do think if he beats Hamzat Chimaev, he surpasses Israel Adesanya and Anderson Silva as the middleweight GOAT. I don't think he surpassed Izzy quite yet. No, he could lose this fight to Chimaev and then beat another, guy or two, like National DDP or something, and I think he probably, is middleweight GOAT. He has some really good wins. His first fight in the UFC was against Darren Till, so missed Darren Till. That was I was watching that fight, and I remember I was like, bro, one of my friends, he's a Darren Till fan. I was like, no, I feel like Darren Till quit, and maybe he did quit, but I'm also seeing because he's boxing up DDP, and at some point DDP's like, I just don't feel like going for that anymore. Like, he makes an active decision to just say, I don't care. Wasn't his first UFC fight. Sorry. First big UFC fight. Because he did fight Brad Tavares, who was pretty good at that time too. I don't know if it was on a win streak, but Tavares was still looking like a good fighter at that point in time. Let me see. Yeah, when he fought DDP, he was on a 2-fight win streak. I guess some decent guys, but still. Then he fought Derek Brunson. I remember that Derek Brunson's pretty much wrestling this man up, and he's like, I just don't care. Make Mink, and then obliterates Derek Brunson. They throw in the towel. I think Derek Brunson retires. He's fighting Whitaker. First round, I'd probably slide Whitaker, but DDP's holding his own. Whitaker does get a takedown, maybe 2. Probably a takedown. I know he got that one takedown. He actually drove into that one too. But eventually DDP just knocks him out. I think the next round he does end up getting Rob on the ground, and Rob can't get up. So, second round blitzes. Rob's trying to blitz in with his, kind of 1-2, or he'll blitz in with a jab. Depending on how you react, then he'll throw a high kick or something. Robert Whitaker has a speed advantage on a lot of these guys, but many times they have that power, or they just don't headhunt. Robert Whitaker many times will headhunt, so he'll come in blitzing, and so DDP just had a jab waiting for him. Just said boop right here, had the jab waiting for him. So boop, sticking out, literally. And so Whitaker goes down. Mink. First fight was split decision with Strickland. I know some people think Strickland won that fight. I slide with DDP just because of how he mixed up his strikes and where he was going. But Sean Strickland, I think, won the fight overall by strikes. But I'm just looking at the body kicks and some of the punches landed. And just the overall body of work that was done by DDP, I just feel like he won that fight against Strickland. He showed he was the better MMA fighter. Just my opinion. Some people think, the striking and headhunting works. And I think, Strickland is a better headhunter than Rob because he's going to attack you and he's going to catch you. And he has, Strickland's probably, his height-wise, it probably might only say like 6'2". I'm not sure. But I think he's like a tall 6'2". I think he's like 6'3"-ish. Like he looked around Izzy's height, a little short, of course. Now, DDP was losing this fight against Izzy. This is probably one of the best fights Izzy had in a minute. Because people say Izzy was washed to some degree. He came off the win against Poatan. Two fights against Poatan, schooling Poatan, gets finished in the 5th round. At that point, Izzy was fighting against Pereira. He was losing that fight, TKO'd him by playing possum in the 2nd round. Now, in that first fight with Pereira, Izzy did drop him. So, had to fight with Strickland. Now, the Strickland loss, I think, if you take Izzy right now against Strickland, I don't think he loses that badly. I just think if you kind of look at, like, certain guys are very prep heavy. So, like, the nature of it is he's thinking about fighting Rob, ends up fighting DDP, but then he's not fighting DDP because DDP pulls out, and then he ends up fighting Strickland, who, at the time, we kind of just saw Strickland get flatlined by Pereira. So, I wouldn't even be surprised if Izzy's coming to that fight like, okay, I can just work on my boxing against this guy, and then, cool, you throw a punch, big mink, 1-2 down the pipe. So this was a really good win from Strickland. So yeah, that Izzy that DDP fought looked really good because when he fought DDP, he was winning that fight, going to the body. He dropped them, but then even when he dropped them, DDP shot for a single leg takedown and got it. So there's certain things that like shown in that fight that Izzy still had it. So they act like he was washed. Nah, not even washed. The Strickland loss was bad, but it wasn't like he was washed. DDP won that by submission. Pretty much just started beating up on Izzy and ended up kind of landing a few hard strikes. Izzy's like, all right, let me try and escape. DDP's like, nah, I'm gonna stay relentless. Took him down, dropped him, and then submitted him. So I think that was the first submission loss in Izzy's career as well. So, there's certain things that DDP is doing to guys where, he's out striking. He knocked out Whitaker, and I don't know if Whitaker had been like cleanly knocked out in a minute. Let me know. Submitted Darren Till, pretty good. It's just, he's done a lot of things to guys. And that second fight against Strickland was just bad. Like, he obliterated Strickland. So, in terms of my thoughts on the winner of the main event, both these guys have a level of plot armor. This is probably some of the most plot armor we've seen. And I'd probably say since Poatan and Yuri Prochazka, this has probably been the most plot armor we've seen in a fight in a minute, if I'm thinking about it. Yeah, I think DDP is probably going to land some more strikes, but it's weird. I do think whoever wins this fight, I'm not going to be mad. I wouldn't be surprised. I just think that in order to beat DDP, who is such a well-rounded athlete and fighter, you have to be a specialist in something. And I do think that Khamzat Chimaev is that level of specialist to where, because like Sean Strickland, yes, he's a great striker, and I would say he's a defensive striking specialist, but his problem is his game plan and what he does is sort of rudimentary with the teep and the strike, the 1-2 punch and the teep, an occasional leg kick, an occasional looping overhand. These are all the strikes he throws, right? So with that being said, versus a guy like Izzy who's throwing several question mark kicks against DDP, punches a couple reps to the body, throwing the elbow up top, trying to chop at his leg. And DDP even said like, when Izzy was kicking me, like he was throwing them joints like Poatan, like he was really trying to take me out, with the kick. So I think and Izzy's winning that fight for the most part. Now, once again, the well-roundedness of DDP, the submission threat and the power, those type of things end up kind of outweighing. But I think if you take a guy at this level of wrestling, of Khamzat Chimaev, I just don't know if... And the thing is, he's still getting better. So I do think the fight against Usman, he expended so much in that first round trying to get Usman out of there. But I think in this fight, all he has to do is just get you on the ground and then just keep you there and then win that fight. You don't have to, I think he's starting to understand that. And he said this in a recent interview. And he said this in a recent interview where he's not 100% sure like how he goes into fights because he's judging them now based off of like where they're at. So, sorry, I'm gonna skip that one. I'm gonna go back to this one. So he's basically judging people back on like where they are, right? So like Robert Whitaker, he was saying, I'm kind of seeing what movements he's making. I'm not trying to get him out of here immediately, but when I see a guy, feel them, and then I'm taking some time to like understand what's going on with them, I can kind of then make a decision based off of that. And DDP does a similar thing where, you know, he'll be losing a fight and he'll just come out and win. Where, you know, Hamzat's the opposite, where, you know, okay, the fight starts kind of grinding, and over time he has slowed down. But I think he's just very patient. You know, I think he's very patient. I think he's one of those guys who are just going to, at the end of the day, use their wrestling. And even if DDP gets up several times, because it's similar to the Usman thing. Like I look at this fight in terms of the grappling being quite similar to the Usman/Burns fights, where you have a guy who's Usman, for example, who's very strong. I just think, you know, with his knees being shot and Hamzat being younger, he's, you know, the way he does his techniques, he's gonna, you know, he got Usman to the ground for sure. And I think Usman also kind of, instead of, he didn't necessarily sprawl immediately the first kind of a couple of times, but overall, as the rounds kept continuing, Usman's takedown defense was holding up until essentially in the end of the third round, they're just swinging. You know, there's no takedown, they're just swinging. So I think DDP has a lot more data to kind of go off of, and also, you know, Usman came on to him 10 days notice, so, you know, not a huge kind of game plan. Just go out here with my innate skills and see what happens. So I think DDP with the full game plan could find a way to neutralize Chimaev for, like, you know, most of the fights. If it ends up going to a decision or like round 4 TKO for DDP, I wouldn't be surprised. But I don't know, bro. Something's just telling me like Hamzat's ability to just keep people on the ground, because Rob took DDP down, and I'm not saying that DDP is just easy to take down either. I think Rob shoots some solid takedowns when he does shoot. I think the problem though is like Hamzat is obviously, as we saw, a phenom. And so we know he's going to get DDP down at some point, right? It's going to happen. And at that point, if it happens once, what's going to stop it from happening multiple times? So DDP, you know, randomly throws a flying knee, or he catches him with some uppercut. You know, I don't know. And I think if Hamzat does start throwing, you know, some of those things Khabib was doing, where Khabib would throw a wild overhand, you know, or he'll throw this big meaty hook, as Lucas Tracy likes to say, and he'll immediately shoot a takedown, immediately go double leg. Like you saw, I think there's a time he stole Conor. He threw the punch, he stole Conor, and then immediately said, boop, shot. So Conor's head is turning back around from getting rocked, and he looks down, dude's already down there sniffing his crotch. You feel me? So I think it's just one of those things. I think in the end, this would be a win for Hamzat Chimaev, but it'll probably be a really good fight. And if the fight goes past the first round, I definitely think DDP's chances go up. But like, it's just one of those things where I think that this is a more patient, calm, collected Chimaev. I'm hoping he throws a strike or two before shooting, but if the first thing he does is shoot, I think DDP's prepared. I just don't know if he's going to be able to stop him. So, you know, the fight goes to a decision, definitely DDP by decision. But you know, I just think the grappling ability for Chimaev is probably there. The takedown defense for Chimaev, obviously 100%. He's never going to go to the ground by anyone. Jigas is 50%, probably going up, you know, over time. But yeah, I mean, it's just, you know, I've seen guys like Brunson and Whitaker, you know, kind of deal with you on the ground. It's, you know, but hey, maybe DDP wins by like superior plot armor. You know what I'm saying? So that's kind of my picks for the card. And as we go through it, pretty decent card. Like I said, the two chicks, one of those chicks gonna win, the Brazilian. I'm gonna go with the Brazilian. You know what I'm saying? Jakar Klose, Edson. I'm gonna slide Edson just because that's my guy. But like, you know, if Klose ends up knocking him out, I wouldn't be surprised. Edson is a tad chinny. Chase Hooper, Hernandez. If it goes to the ground, definitely Hooper for the win. If it's on the feet, Hernandez probably might find a way to catch him with a, you know, random, a random shot, or, you know, Hooper's maybe going for a takedown, shucks it off, catches him with a, you know, a kick to the liver, make down the pipe, you know, with a 1-2 punch. I don't know, something like that. Like I said, Jessica Andrade, Godinez. I'm going with Andrade. That's the OG. You feel me? I'm just going with the OG. Meerschaert, Oleksiejczuk, going with my man's. I'm actually going with Meerschaert by submission, but I'm not gonna lie. Polish Power, Oleksiejczuk probably wins that, and I'm not even gonna be surprised. if that's the case. Eric Nolan, Basigar, Sudakar, Murugara, whatever his name is, all that. Yeah, you got that. Tim Elliott, Kaya Sakura, I got that one. Jared Cannonier, MVP. I'm going to slide with MVP on that one, but it'd be good to see 41-year-old Jared Cannonier get a dub. And I think some people are underrating Jared Cannonier in this matchup. He does make good adjustments. Carlos Prates, Jeff Neal. I want Jeff Neal to win just because that's my guy, OG, you know, but if Carlos Prates wins, he basically replaces him in this sport and division. You know, Carlos Prates is a good guy, flying nerd, got a lot of respect, and he's a good striker. So I just think he's a tad bit slow for someone his age. Got Lerone Murphy, Aaron Pico. As I said, Lerone Murphy should school Aaron Pico, hopefully. You know what I'm saying? But then finally, I got Hamza Chimaev winning the main event against Dricus du Plessis. But wouldn't be surprised if Dricus wins. So yeah, let me know in the comments, whoever does end up watching the show, you know how y'all feel about it. That's your boy Stickman. Yeah, that's me. So yeah, we out. Pretty much gonna just call it there, and yeah, throw my intro, outro, all that stuff. Peace.
Look at you, skipping training again. Don't you remember what happened last time? How do you expect to achieve anything with that weak, lazy mindset of yours? Get back to work.